We are joined today by a pair of talented gents. First up, he is an actor, writer, comedian, and more who has appeared in films including Zero Charisma, Fuck My Son, and Paper Street's own Blood Relatives with Noah Segan. Please welcome Mr. John Gholson to the program.
Hi.
Good to have you, John. We are joined as well by a fellow Austin-based actor, filmmaker who you may have seen in films including Joe Begos' Bliss, Joe Lynch's Suitable Flesh, Paper Street's own Scare Package 2. He is Mr. Graham Skipper. Graham, thank you as well for joining us.
Hello. Thank you.
We are glad to have you both, gentlemen, and we are glad to be talking about a feature film we can find both of you starring in called Man Finds Tape, which is making its festival run right now.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And how we always start this is we go all the way back to the beginning and ask, what gave you the bug and got you interested in film and genre and art? Was there a person in your life or an experience, a movie, anything, a piece of pop culture that kind of got you hooked?
I was trying to define this in a short way for myself, and I think it was just a slow rolling evolution and sort of a soup of events. My mom, when I was a kid, was a theater major, and so she was going to a community college and doing plays. And I think when I was 7, I did Oedipus, and at age 8 had done like Antigone, and that was my first taste of like acting. You can call it acting. I guess being in front of an audience, it wasn't really like acting. I think in Oedipus, I led a blind man around the stage, and in Antigone, at the start of the acts, there was a town crier child that would come out and say like what day it was. So it wasn't, there wasn't some great performance behind it or anything like that. That introduced me to acting as sort of just like a concept beyond just movies and television and stuff like that. And then childhood could get a little rough. I think movies were always my safe space. I loved going to the movies. I loved, movie nights, renting movies, stuff like that. So it's always been sort of a preferred version of storytelling. And I think like a weird ingredient in this soup is that when I was a kid, I would play with my action figures, but I wouldn't just play with my action figures. I would set up a cassette recorder and I would record like serialized adventures with these action figures. And then I would pass out the cassette tapes at school. They would make the round for about a week as kids passed them back and forth to each other. And then I would do the second part, the third part, so on and so forth. Then I started doing supplemental comics to the audio cassette recordings.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think, I hadn't really thought about how that ties into my acting until, we did a press day last week and somebody had asked me where I got my start. And I was really like, I don't know. I guess, my mom going to theater. But I think really the bug for me was probably those serialized action figure adventure cassette tapes. That's really where I started to feel like, I can do character voices and I can tell stories and things like that. And then from there on, it was school plays and, it just evolved from there. Yeah.
How about you, Graham?
Yeah, both of my parents were really heavily involved in theater from, when I was born, basically. And my dad was an actor and directed a lot of like community theater shows. So I was on stage from like age 5. The thing that really gave me the cinema bug, I always loved movies growing up. I mean, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, that sort of stuff. But I was always fascinated by the iconography of classic horror movies, Dracula, Frankenstein, The Wolfman, The Mummy, stuff like that. And I had this book. It had all the movie monsters in it. So all the classic ones, also like Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, Pinhead, and it was this big like picture book. And I was way too scared. I was a big scaredy cat. And I was way too scared to watch the movies. So I would just sit there and look at the book and sort of read like what the movies were about. And that would scare me and get me excited. And then one day I was like 10 years old. I was 9 or 10. And in my mind, I decided I really wanted to watch horror movies, but I needed to get over being scared. So if I watch the scariest one first, that'll get it out of the way. And then everything else will be easy. And so I asked my dad what the scariest movie ever made was. And he said, well, I think it's The Exorcist. So I was 9 or 10 and I watched The Exorcist with my parents. Scared the hell out of me. Terrible idea. Slept in their room that night, the whole bit. But the next day, all I wanted to do was get up and watch it over and over and over again because I was trying to unravel in my, nascent mind, like, how did this thing that I know fundamentally is not real, how did it affect me like that. And I just became a big horror head, and ended up going to theater school. And I did a whole lot of work doing sketch comedy and kind of indie theater up in New York, and always with an eye towards wanting to do horror stuff. And, luckily enough, I ended up crossing paths with George Wendt, and by him, Stuart Gordon, and got in Reanimator the musical, and that was that. And I, really have just been very, very happy to be involved in horror stuff since then. I love it. I've always loved it.
With either of you, I mean, those are both good backstories for sure. You'd kind of jumped forward to when you started working, but was there additional schooling for either of you? Did either of you do any kind of proper film school or proper acting school beyond just high school? Or was it just you were taking jobs the second you were?
No, yeah. I went to Fordham University up in New York to their theater school for acting. So I have a degree in theater, and I'm really happy that I went. One of the things that I loved about my program was that they really emphasized the ability to put on a production yourself, like doing everything. Building the sets, painting the sets, designing the sets, hanging lights, designing costumes, because it was really, I think that they were trying to instill in us the idea that to really get started and to really build yourself a career, you've got to do everything yourself, and you got to be hands-on, that you're not just going to be one of the lucky few that steps right into a Broadway show and then there you go. And so that I think also just gave me a real love and appreciation for like DIY indie film, just sort of that ethos of you got to do it yourself. Those tend to be the movies that I'm drawn to anyway, are the films that are really ground up and, made by people that really love it with limited means. And I think it really goes back to my training there at Fordham. But yeah, that's where I got my training, was good old Fordham theater program.
I had a little bit of high school. I had one semester of community college. That was about it and that was like early 90s, up until recently when I did Man Finds Tape. And then about a week after that did Fuck My Son. There was a part of me that was like, oh gosh, I would like to up my game. Like, I've never taken any formal training. There's certain things that I would like to have in my tool belt. And I'd like to understand acting a little bit more instead of just kind of winging it. It turned out, so I started attending classes at Playhouse ATX, which is taught by two TV veterans, Marshall Allman, who was on True Blood and Prison Break, and his wife, Jamie Allman, who was in The Notebook and was in The Killing. And I've been taking their courses now for about a year. It's like Meisner stuff, but that's all been recent, and it's all been because I was like, all right, if I'm taking this seriously, if this is now my career, I need to get good. I need to stop winging it as much. It turns out that a lot of things kind of instinctually that maybe I had sort of figured out on my own through multiple productions had sort of aligned nicely with the Meisner technique. But still, there was stuff to learn, and I'm still learning now. So,
John, were you considering maybe other careers earlier on in your life, or other things involved in the art?
I was in one. I had worked 13 years in software design and would do film projects as they came. The big thing for me, I think, was everything kind of spun out of Zero Charisma. A lot of the opportunities that I've been given. Zero Charisma was a movie. It's a comedy about D&D that played South by Southwest and won an audience award. And it had kind of a cult following and a couple big champions. One of those was Bobcat Goldthwait, who passed it along to Jonah Ray Rodriguez, who I just saw in Suitable Flesh with Graham, actually. He passed it along to Jonah Ray, and then Jonah Ray at the time brought it to Nerdist, and that got seen by people. And then when Jonah Ray did Hidden America, he kind of offered me a part in Hidden America. There were some other opportunities that have come up in the past, 15 odd years that are mostly spun out of Zero Charisma. And I was working software design that whole entire time, and in the back of my head going, man, this is really what I'd rather be doing that. I'd rather be acting. I'd much rather be acting than doing client projects for oil and gas companies and things like that. And after I finished the two films in 2024, I'd never done two movies back to back like that. I mean, it was really like Man Finds Tape wrapped, and then it was like straight into Fuck My Son. And that was another one where it was based on opportunities. It was like, hey, I've got a part for you in this movie. I didn't necessarily audition for it. And I came out the other side going, man, I've had a lot of doors open without a lot of hustle on my side, and how different would my life be if I actually put some hustle in instead of just like waiting for these things to kind of land in my lap. I mean, I've been very, very, very lucky that I was in one comedy that a lot of people liked many years ago. I came out the other side of that and was like, all right, this summer, which was summer 2024, I was like, I'm going to get an agent, I'm going to get a headshot, cut my reel. And I did all that over the course of the summer. I got my headshots and cut my reel. And then September came. I'd reached out to an agency in August. They didn't get back to me. So I emailed them again and was like, hey, I'm going to start shopping around because they were my first choice. And I was like, I'm going to start looking at other agencies. They said, can you meet this week? I said, yeah. I signed with the agency. 2 days later, unrelated to me signing with the agency because nobody at my day job knew this. 2 days later, I was let go of my job of 13 years. So I called my agent back and was like, all right, let's go. Like, I can do this. I'm going to try to do this as like my full-time thing. And then, yeah, that was that. And so for the past year, acting has been my primary profession.
Sounds like the universe was guiding you towards it.
It was pretty crazy. Yeah.
And Graham, I assume you don't have like a side gig as a software engineer or anything on your side. Did you know that what you wanted to do was act, or did you also explore anything else?
I mean, it was either this or astronaut. No, I've known since I was a kid that I wanted to be an actor. It was the thing that I was always most passionate about. And I was very lucky. Like I said, I went to school for it. And then right away, I was auditioning for stuff, but really I started just producing my own theater with my friends from school. And we started doing, a lot of really inventive, interesting shows at some really cool venues around New York City. And it was through that I just started meeting people and just sort of learned the work begets work kind of truth of everything in this business. That, I mean, really, like John was just saying, like the more that you do stuff, the more people you've worked with and the more people see your stuff and then they want to work with you. And, as long as you show up on time, know your shit, and you're not an asshole, like people keep wanting to work with you. And I was very lucky that just kind of kept happening, and I was passionate about it. And I used to say when I was a kid, like if people would ask, like, what kind of, I can't figure out how to phrase it, but like basically, if, who would be the famous person I'd want to be? And I would always say, I want to be Bruce Campbell. That I want to be Bruce Campbell from Evil Dead. Like, that's who I want to be. And, that's just always been what I've been passionate about. And I've just been very lucky that sort of things have fallen in the way that they have. And I've been able to keep playing in this sandbox for a long time. Now, that's not to say that I don't do a lot of other stuff, because this business is lots of highs and lots of lows. So I have definitely some of my favorite work has been substitute teaching, and definitely being able to suss out the cool kids by like which ones have a Leatherface sticker on their laptop.
Something we ask a lot of people, at least with actors, we've asked this question, and John kind of pointed that it could be something very recent, because John, I know you've dabbled also with comedy and, if I'm not mistaken, sketch or improv as well, but
yeah, mostly sketch. I've done some improv, but improv makes me, I thought I didn't like improv, and then I did a comedy feature called Make Popular Movies that was all improvised, and loved the experience. Basically, we were given like, like the Blair Witch actors, like, this scene, you need to do this, or this is the information that you have. We would run through it a couple times. As rehearsal, the director would cherry pick lines or moments that he liked, and we would do that 3 or 4 times, and then he would shoot 3 or 4 times as an improvisation. That was the first like real fulfilling improv that I ever did. I tried my hand at it on stage, and it just never clicked with me. Maybe I'm too much of a control freak, I'm not sure, but like sketch was sort of where it was at for me. So, because I like to write, right. So I like to write and perform, so I liked writing sketches. I had a sketch troupe here in Austin called the Voyagers, but we just sent the Voyagers on their last voyage back in May, because I just didn't have the time to keep doing it, and it had been too long between shows and that sort of thing. I still kind of in the back of my head, I would love to find a sketch troupe that operates like a band, where you get together and you have rehearsals and you polish the shit out of stuff. But I think in Austin, I think the sketch scene is a little bit more people passing through, people kind of interested. It's hobbyists more than it is people going, hey, we could really make a destination sketch troupe here in town. There are destination improv troupes in Austin. There aren't really destination sketch troupes in Austin. And so it's still kind of my first love when it comes to executing comedy in a theater. But yeah, I did sketch comedy for about a little over 10 years. 2014 was my first time I set foot in that theater. So 2015 would have been my first sketch show. So yeah, it was like about 10 years worth.
John's correct. I mean, I did a lot of sketch in New York, and something that John said like really rang true. Like for sketch to work really well, because I love sketch. Sketch was also my first love, quote unquote professionally. I wasn't making any money at it, but like the first thing after college that I did was sketch. And John's totally correct in that, like, to make something really good, you have to get together, rehearse, polish. You have to treat it like a show. And that's what's so hard about maintaining that, is that it takes up a lot of fucking time. But, John, you and I should talk about this, buddy.
We should talk offline. Yeah.
Right. We should talk offline about this. This is interesting.
Well, this was all a big precursor, funny enough. The question I was going to say is John's could be tricky because he's still kind of evolving into acting, but he's always been dabbling in entertainment in other forms. But the question we do ask a lot of actors is, was there a moment where you first felt like, oh my God, I've made it? Or at least I've made it to where the first threshold of like success, where I could tell my mom I was in this thing that she might have seen or something to that effect. Do either of you have that kind of moment where it hit you? Day job aside for John.
I think it was, to be honest, it was probably Hidden America for multiple reasons. One, it was directed by Troy Miller, who's done like most of the episodes of The Office, Parks and Rec, like basically The Good Place, like most every comedy show in the past 20 years, he's directed, if not one episode, then many, many episodes of it. I think doing that and getting that paycheck from NBC was like, Hidden America was still a small show because it was on NBC's streaming platform at the time, which was CISO, which I think only lasted about a year before they axed it. But I'm watching Hidden America and I'm like, oh shit, there's Dana Gould as a character. There's Weird Al. And I'm a character on the show. And that was the first time that I felt like this sort of confirmation. I may have the opposite of, I've been talking to friends about this recently. I may have the opposite of imposter syndrome, where it's sort of like imposter syndrome. I guess it's like, oh, no, I'm not that, or I'm not that good, or I'm what. And instead I'm like, no, give me a shot. Like, let me see if I am. Like, let me step up and try. I think I am. Let me see. And like, I don't know what that is. It's not imposter syndrome. It's like the direct opposite of it. It's kind of foolhardy. It doesn't come with a great big ego. It's just a matter of like, no, I think I'm capable, but I want the opportunities to prove it. And I think that was one where it was like, oh crap, like I'm in the room exchanging dialogue with a seasoned comic professional in the form of Jonah Ray. The writing was by Mike Mitchell, who was in the room and did a lot of hands-on directing. Troy Miller's in the room. And I was like, oh crap, I held my own. I'm a character on the show along with all these other comedians and actors and stuff that I respect. And that was really, for me, a bit of professional confirmation that like, oh, I can do this. I don't stick out like a sore thumb. Like, you wouldn't know that I go back to my software job after the shoot is over.
Yeah, gosh, thinking for myself, I think back to New York days and our comedy troupe. We did a whole lot of work in little black box theaters and comedy cellars and stuff like that. And then eventually we got a short run performing at Caroline's on Broadway, which is, well, it's sadly closed now, but it was a very famous like comedy venue in New York. And I invited my parents, and it was one of those things where, like, I think they knew what I was doing, but our show was very vulgar, and it was very, I was naked a lot, like it was stuff that you don't necessarily invite mom and dad to. But we were performing at Caroline's, and it was, I think it was that moment of just like stepping into a very famous place and, standing on this stage that you've seen like all these very famous comedians stand on, and getting to perform the stuff that you wrote was just a really powerful moment for me, and a moment where I thought, yeah, like I can do this. Because John's right. I've got imposter syndrome for days, and I never think that I deserve to belong anywhere, really. And it's moments like that, as an actor, that remind you like you have talent and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and it's okay that like this is fun. Yeah, so I think it was probably that first performance at Caroline's. It was pretty special.
All right, let's jump into Man Finds Tape now that we've gotten to know you both a little bit better and kind of where you're coming from leading up to your roles in the film. I wanted to start out by asking how each of you got involved in Man Finds Tape. At what point in the process were any of the parts written for you? Do you know? Or how did it all come about?
Nothing was written for me. They had some last minute dropouts in regards to like the casting that kind of happened at the 11th hour. And there were also some roles to be filled that needed to happen at the 11th hour as well. And Peter had given me the script to read to try me out for a couple different roles that had not been cast yet, or had somebody, who had scheduling fall through or something like that. So I took a look at it. I went over to Peter and Paul's house and auditioned for a couple roles. Peter had asked me before I went over there, do you know anybody that could fill the role of Endicott Carr, who is a mysterious small town preacher kind of at the center of the mystery. And I read the script, and on the page, he's like 80 years old, and he's like tall and spindly, and sort of like the mental picture of like the guy from Poltergeist 2 or Phantasm or something like that, where it's like, oh, this older man who's like imposing and creepy and all this kind of stuff. And I read the script, and I told Peter, I said, hey, can I share a video with you? And he said, yeah. And I looked up footage of this San Antonio televangelist named John Hagee, who is just pure hatred. He's all hellfire and brimstone. And he got a little bit of infamy in the early 2000s for coming out so hard against like Pokemon and then Harry Potter. But I sent him a clip of Hagee, and Hagee, the clip I sent, it was the 90s, so he was a little bit younger. And Hagee doesn't look like, the Poltergeist 2 guy. He doesn't look like the tall man. He looks like Fred Flintstone. He looks like me. He just doesn't look like that. So I think that I sent that to Peter, and Peter's response was like, oh, back in text, where when you read that text, it says, oh, he's like, oh, I could tell Peter was like thinking if the character as written on the page could possibly be reframed. I went and did the audition, read for a couple parts, but the Endicott Carr part in particular, I grew up in and around like evangelical Christianity. And when we weren't going to like a non-denominational church, we went to Assembly of God churches, which were more prevalent in East Texas and that sort of thing. And I was like, I think I can do this. Again, that thing of like, oh, I think I can do this. And it's not an ego thing. I want to be clear. It's like when you think you can go skydiving and you're like, oh, I think I could go skydiving. I think I could make that jump. I think I'm brave enough. I think I have the necessary requirements with which to execute this. And it was a case of that where it's like, I know these guys, like I can do this, I think. And I went and I did it, and it was a great audition. I could feel Peter and Paul and Ashley Landavazo, the producer, sort of all leaning forward during the preaching parts, because Endicott's audition had like from the pulpit preaching, it had stuff where he was on TV and stuff where he was interacting with the townspeople. So he had to be modulated like 3 different ways. But the preaching stuff in particular, the living room was like electric. And I didn't necessarily walk away thinking I got the part, because again, the part on paper is so different than myself. But I did walk away going, that's probably the best audition I've ever had, just in regards to killing an audition. I killed the audition. And then the next thing I know, I got it. So yeah, that was kind of like my path into Man Finds Tape. I know Peter and Paul. We've talked more in the past year. It's kind of funny because I know them from 2 completely different worlds, and I'm not entirely sure how they know each other. I went to college with Paul like 20 years ago in Savannah College of Art and Design. And Peter, I used to take gigs as a writer for the AOL websites. And I met Peter, who was the associate editor at the time when I was like writing for AOL. So 2 completely different walks of life that I met them in. And then, now they're collaborators. But
yeah. And then I had known Dave Lawson for a lot of years, just through like the indie horror circles, and we were buds. And I believe I also got a text from him saying, hey, can you think of anybody to play Endicott Carr? And I had the sort of same dilemma, because that's, of how he's written in the script. And I suggested a few people that I kind of knew probably wouldn't work out, but I was like, here. And I think he asked for some suggestions for a couple of other roles. And I gave him a few people. And then some time passed, and he reached out, and I guess he had just suddenly had the thought of the idea of me as Boone. He said, hey, you like barbecue, right? As sort of as a joke, which of course I like barbecue. And I said, yeah. And so he said, would you mind putting this on tape? And so I read some of Boone's scenes on tape, and all of a sudden I was, doing a movie with these guys. I had met Paul before. I don't think I'd ever actually even met Peter. I knew who he was, like through like the Fantastic Fest press circuits and stuff. But, this was all mostly, with the exception of Dave and Justin and Aaron, a kind of a newish crowd for me to be a part of. So I was really excited to get to work with some new folks. And I was still, I'm still relatively new to the Austin area. I've been here for 5 years, but a couple of those were pandemic years. And I sort of feel like I'm still trying to get into the kind of Austin acting scene. But I was really excited to meet some other, Austin based folks and work with them. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I got involved. It was just good old Austin thinking of me and knowing that I really loved barbecue.
If you're not a vegetarian, you live in Austin, you kind of just have to by default. But yeah. Peter S. Hall, Paul Gandersman, the directors of the film we've been mentioning kind of around in circles. But there is so many, as part of Paper Street, we can say watching the credits of this alone, even the faces we didn't recognize in the movie, the crew, I felt like we knew this whole group. It's so many wonderful people. You guys are among folks like Kelsey Brabilski, Brian Villalobos and all in this movie. But with that Texas connection, and Graham says he's a little new to it, but Graham fits in pretty well, and 5 years is 5 years. But because you were somewhat comfortable with knowing a lot of these folks, like how did that impact the vibe on set for each of you?
I don't think it was interesting because I've never been directed by either one of them, even though I knew them. And I think it was a matter of discovery on both of us, like for Peter and Paul to kind of like find out my capabilities and for me to find out their capabilities. I think even though we'd known each other, it's sort of like, your friend can do a skateboard trick, but you don't know that he can make spaghetti. You know what I'm saying? It's like Paul went to film school, so I had an awareness that Paul was like a capable filmmaker, and then knew that he'd been working for Flow Sports. But like for this to be Peter's first, well, it's Peter and Paul's first feature, but I had not seen Peter direct anything. He had done some films back in the day that he keeps very close to his chest. He says no one will ever see them, and we harass him about that all the time. But it was a new relationship because I had not been directed by them and they had never directed me. Having both of them there too, it's hard for me to say, like, I don't know what a solo Paul movie looks like or what a solo Peter movie looks like, because for me, it was interesting to be on set with two directors because one could handle technical stuff while the other one could actually spend some time answering questions or talking to the actors. And then I didn't know any of the other actors that were in the film, really. Brian Villalobos and I are in Blood Relatives together, but we don't share any scenes together. And Akasha as well is in Blood Relatives, and she's in the film. It's funny, we all have maintained relationships outside of the movie after the movie wrapped, and that hasn't happened with really any project I've ever done. So like everybody that I met there on set all sort of have become friends. Brian especially, because not to get too, I don't want to give anything away, but Brian has a scene of physicality with me, and he felt so bad that he kept messaging me about it. And we ended up starting a conversation, and then that conversation kept rolling, and Brian and I have remained good friends and in conversation since that very first conversation. Yeah, that's a long, rambling way to say, I think it definitely drew us all closer, and we all got to learn things about each other that we didn't know before about each other's abilities and talents and interests and things we bring to the table and creativity and all that kind of stuff. And that goes for all my cast members as well, where it was just like all these strangers who all just were so committed to selling the reality of this situation in the movie.
Yeah, I didn't really know who all I would know on set aside from Dave, and I walked on, and the very first person I saw was Luke Mullen, who's an old bud, and I was just immediately sort of at ease, and I was also excited because I knew there was going to be a lot of improv. My first day on set was doing some of the talking head interview stuff, and we'd sort of talked beforehand about we're going to kind of riff, we've got some talking points we want to hit on, but then we're going to play around with some stuff, and that's where I really feel most comfortable. I love improv stuff. I love getting to kind of play around. And I also had the good fortune of having one of the kind of funnier roles in this. I, have some comedic moments, which is a place I also feel very comfortable and where I knew I could have some fun. So I was really relaxed and excited. And what's funny is John and I didn't even know John was in this, but he and I were while this was happening, we're playing in a D&D group together. So we had met completely separately. And then I think it was sometime later, because I mean, I read the whole script the one time because they were wanting to get some recommendations for some characters, but then I got the Boone stuff and I reread the script again. But I don't know. I guess I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to like who was playing who, because if we ever talked about it during D&D, I never caught on that John was in this movie. And we, and I was like so pleasantly surprised, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this thing. And every day on set, like including filming at that amazing gas station where we filmed, actually the gas station from the Texas Chainsaw remake, which I was nerding out about. Everybody was just so nice and so chill, and that is very much like the Austin film vibe. Everybody's in it to win it, and everybody's playing on the same team. It's stressful in the way that making a movie is stressful, but it's very not stressful in the way that, like, it's clear that everybody's doing this because they love it. And those are definitely the best environments to be in on set.
Graham, you mentioned that you're a bit of a comic relief in the film. I'm curious, was that the plan from the beginning, or did the opportunity for comedy sort of emerge organically and through maybe some of the improv that you just mentioned?
I mean, I don't know if it was intended in the script, but that's what I got out of it when I read it. I read this guy as just a very simple, straightforward dude, because that's sort of how he's written. And I think that it's sort of inevitable in a movie like this where there's such dark, scary stuff happening that when you have someone like Boone, who's sort of what you see is what you get, you're going to get some funny anachronisms there. And then really in that first day of doing the talking head interview stuff, we just played around a lot. And I think that we found a lot of Boone's character in that, me and Peter and Paul just kind of riffing and going through stuff and finding little funny moments. And, that just sort of carried through.
Graham, have you seen it with an audience yet?
I have not. I'm very excited.
Yeah, Graham doesn't realize, like, he's a really much needed, like, pressure release. When you see it with an audience, there's a couple moments where you can feel the audience welcome the chuckles that he provides, which is not like, he's not like a comic relief character, but it's just enough for the audience to kind of like relax a little so that we can get him back into it. He's a perfect ingredient and just seasoned exactly where he needs to be seasoned.
Thank you. I like being the paprika of a film.
I mean, John is right. It is such a kind of a dark film in general in tone. And so it does provide some moments of levity, or like you said, he's just a regular dude. And there's something really funny about a regular dude caught up in this sort of situation. Did you ever have to pull anything back? Like as you were workshopping it, they're like, oh, maybe that's a little too comedic or not quite the right tone.
I don't recall ever doing that. I just kind of, I think that right away we kind of found a balance of because, like, look, I grew up in Texas. I've known this guy. I have met this guy. I have probably eaten barbecue served by this guy. So I had a pretty good sense of like the reality of the situation. I'm not playing a caricature. I'm playing a real person. And these people really do exist. So I feel like we all just kind of found that, and we found the right tone with it. Even in the scenes where there's other really dark shit happening, we've all made enough horror films at this point to kind of recognize that rise and fall that great horror films have. And I think that working with the guys, we just were able to find a fun tone and a fun level to it and just kind of coast and just have some fun.
No, you did a good job. You have an aside in the movie, and I don't know if it was scripted or you guys just playing around, but you refer to the one character as like a wet ass or a wet rag or something. Do you remember what you said?
Oh, yeah, a wet blanket.
It was just wet blanket. Okay, I couldn't remember.
I think it was, or maybe, oh God, what did I say? A wet ass blanket or something. Anyway,
yeah, it was something like that. I don't think it was just wet blanket. But
I believe that was me. Because they just, and sometimes this can be dangerous, but they were just like, yeah, why don't you just go, just talk a little bit, like, okay, and just sort of riffed on what they'd already written, and I threw in definitely some of my grandpa's phrases that he used to say. God, I think in one take I threw in there something my grandpa used to say, which was he was uglier in a bucket full of assholes. That's one of my personal favorites. But yeah, I don't know, I drew a lot of my grandpa on and other folks that I met, and again, it's about having fun. That's what we're all doing here, right?
Yeah, the play stuff is like, it's crazy because There was a lot of scripted, but there was a lot of, hey, just we're going to let the cameras roll. Just do whatever you think your character would. All the stuff that's in the trailer of put the hand on the screen, I'm going to pray over you, and saying that prayer with the hand on the screen was improvisation. That was all just like, we're going to shoot some Salvation Hour stuff. Just act like you're doing the show. And I said, okay. And that was one of the things. And it's crazy. You do it in the moment. You don't think anything of it. And then the next thing you know, it's the thing that's the centerpiece of the trailers.
Right.
It's been kind of bizarre to see because, again, we were afforded so much opportunity to play and create within our own character.
Well, yeah, follow up to you, John. Speaking of getting to play, you mentioned how you kind of really patterned it after that one particular Fire and Brimstone TV preacher. But at any moment, were you drawing inspiration from any other TV roles or any other people or any other, like a father, an uncle, just somebody in your life, or no?
No, not necessarily. I think Hagee was a matter of not so much based on him, but leveraged him to change the frame of mind for the visual so that you could still be somebody who seemed like a religious figure that still seemed oppressive without it being like a 6'4", 80-year-old skeleton man. So the Hagee stuff was more to reframe kind of their mental picture of it, not necessarily like based on him. You know, the hand thing the prayer hand thing actually is based on something, which is, I don't know if you guys remember in the early 2000s, there was a viral video, pre-YouTube viral video called The Farting Preacher. That was a guy that would squint his eyes really, really tight and then fart sounds would play.
I don't remember that, but damn, that sounds
yeah.
great.
So
I'm gonna look it up. Look it up right now.
It was clips of evangelist Robert Tilton, and Robert Tilton, when he would pray for somebody, would clench his eyes up really, really tight, and sometimes make a fist, and people would dub farting sounds over it. But Robert Tilton used to do a thing where he would put his hand on the TV screen and ask people to pray with him and put their hands on the TV screen. So the Tilton thing was straight up I just ripped that off of Robert Tilton. You know, the rest was sort of a melange of not any of the pastors that I had as a kid, but guest speakers, because as guest speakers come through and they want to get everybody fired up and that sort of thing. So, and a lot of it was drawn from my time in East Texas. I grew up in the Houston area, and much like the Osteens, which are my church growing up was like the sister church of Lakewood, and everything is kind of, they're still preaching, but they're a little more genteel. It's all like, prosperity gospel, like if you believe it, you can achieve it kind of stuff, not necessarily like, oh, you're going to hell. And it wasn't until I moved to East Texas that was more, all the sermons become focused on sin and where you're going to spend eternity and all that kind of stuff. So it was drawn kind of on that time in East Texas, but really just a matter of like, can I don't know if this is too much how the sausage is made, but like it was a matter of feeling pretty confident that I could get the patterns of speech down in the preaching to sound like I'd actually been to like seminary school and preach like somebody who would preach in a small Texas town. Because Lord knows I've heard literally hundreds of them. And if I could get the talk right, if I could talk the talk, then the work for me is walking the walk, because then can I play this character in other scenarios becomes where the work of it is after the voice, right? So I can craft the voice and go, can I sound legitimately like a preacher from the pulpit? And I was like, okay, I think I can do that. Now comes the work of like, let me make this an actual human being and not just a voice, not just a sketch comedy character where it's, I can talk like a preacher, but can I also then function outside of the pulpit with any consistency? And that's where the more intellectual decisions come in than and emotional decisions than just vocal ones.
No, understood. And here I thought the reach out and touch the television bit was you just channeling Dusty Rhodes' Hard Times promo, but
oh yeah,
it's good to know it was just an improv moment.
Hard times, baby.
Yes. So Graham did mention a bit ago that he has not had the opportunity to see this with an audience, which I hope he can rectify that with its limited theatrical run it's getting.
Oh, I will. I sure will. I will be there with bells on.
That's good. But John, just out of curiosity, if you've seen it in front of an audience yourself, you mentioned some of the reactions. Have there been any surprises beyond just a couple of those kind of moments of levity? Like, did anything surprise you about maybe their interpretation, some of the film's themes that are touched on? Or
I did have somebody mention something that I thought was interesting on social media that had to do with Brian's character. And it kind of was like, oh, that's kind of a cool take, which was that somebody that saw it said that the movie was like, imagine a Hellblazer comic that followed the regular people, and then John Constantine just shows up for a page and leaves. They were kind of like framing that as Brian's character, who's a stranger who becomes part of this whole situation, actually interacts a lot with Graham. He interacts more with Graham than I think he does me in the film. He's obviously mystic. He knows stuff that the characters don't know. And I thought that was an interesting read on it, was sort of like, oh, it's Garfield without Garfield. It's like, oh, it's Constantine without Constantine. It's like, yeah, here's what if Constantine dropped into a bunch of Texas college-age kids while they were going through some real shit. I thought that was a cool take. I think the thing that's been surprising to me overall has been that people have really taken to it. I mean, it's, you do stuff and you hope that people like it, but I think just horror is so finicky and so fickle, and it's so subject to whims and tastes. And a lot of times people get chips on their shoulder about stuff where it's like, oh, I heard it was scary. That ain't scary. And then they don't like it, and the movie could be great. And I think that the thing that has probably surprised me the most is screening after screening are the amount of people that actually genuinely like the film. You know, I can watch it as a horror fan and go, okay, Peter and Paul, to me, even if I wasn't in the film, I think they do a good job, like, setting up sort of a sense of dread that just kind of maintains. So it doesn't necessarily have a bunch of like boogity, like jump out scares or things like that. But I think that kind of it starts off kilter and that it lives there the whole time. And that's a pretty good place for a horror movie to live. And the fact that audiences are responding to that has been really heartwarming.
Right. I would say a movie made by some Texas folks about a woman trying to find some answers of what happened to her sibling through a mix of found footage and narrative. You should go see Shelby Oaks on VOD now. No, I'm kidding. You guys have a few similarities with our movie I was watching and realizing accidental, of course. But no, Man Finds Tape also on VOD now. Please see them both.
Yeah, and we've been big supporters of you guys, and you guys have been big supporters of us, and it doesn't go unnoticed. You know, Graham mentioned earlier, like, that's the whole thing, right? Is like a rising tide lifts all boats. And it's been really cool to be in that position of like everybody in it together. I don't know. Is that cheesy?
No, man.
It's everybody has each other's backs.
The Austin community thing is legit, and I guess you have to kind of experience it yourself to understand. But yeah, if you don't know somebody in Austin in the industry, you know somebody who has definitely worked with them. It's kind of a one person removed type of community. So yes,
and I feel too, just to jump in on this, I mean, I feel one of the things that I love about the horror community so much is that by and large, I mean, obviously there's exceptions to every rule, but by and large, I've always found the horror crowd, specifically the horror filmmaking crowd, the people that are like really making this stuff, to all be very supportive of each other. And that's not true in a lot of the entertainment industry. You know, the entertainment industry in every sort of facet, whether you're an actor, a director, a writer, a musician, whoever, it can be really cutthroat. And there can be a whole lot of, you hear a whole lot of stories about people trying to undercut each other for roles and stuff like that. But that's just not generally true in the indie horror world. And I think a big part of that is because all the people that really have dedicated themselves to this and that really love this stuff, we were all the outcasts at a certain point in our lives, right? We were all the ones that were, I remember back in the prehistoric days when liking Star Wars was something that you got made fun of for. And so when you find your people, you latch onto them and you want to help them make other cool shit, because them making cool shit helps you make cool shit. And there are fewer, more supportive professionals in the industry that you'll ever find than those that work in the horror sphere. And that's certainly just been true for me personally with everyone at Paper Street. Paper Street, is really, for me, like one of the prime examples of just a supportive, helpful crew. Same with Rustic Films, everybody's just out to help each other because, again, we all want to make cool shit, and to make cool shit, that means other people have to be successful making cool shit. So let's all make cool shit together.
Amen. That should be John's line. He's the preacher.
Yes, misfits got to stick together.
Mm-hmm.
All right, bringing it back to Man Finds Tape a bit. I think, John, you touched on this a little bit about kind of how folks have had, some of their own interpretations with the kind of Constantine without Constantine bit. But I think for me personally, I found that there was a lot of different threads pulled on in Man Finds Tape that are very relevant today. And whether it be themes about religious control or just about the power of an unreliable narrator in media, really important right now, I think. I guess for both of you, I'm curious, what themes did you personally connect the most with in the script?
Oh gosh.
God, why are you asking these big smart questions?
Do you want me to ask a dumb one instead, or?
No, it's a good question. I think I can speak for me, and obviously, like, as an actor, you come at projects from a very specific perspective, right? Like, I look at every project that I'm acting in from the perspective of my character, and that's kind of where everything kind of builds out from. But like, the thing for me that I love about this is that I think it really effectively captures the idea of normal people caught in something extraordinary. When I think about like the world that we're living in right now, there are often times where, like I'll say to someone, I mean, it feels like I'm in a dream right now, and not in a good way. And how is this, you hear people say all the time, how is this reality? And I feel like there's something to that in Man Finds Tape of this very believable, odd thing that is going down in this town, and these very believable people, as unique and interesting as they are, there's nobody that there's nobody that feels fake. Everything feels real, and it escalates to a point where we cross the threshold into the fantastical, but none of it ever feels forced. And I think that that's something that the guys really did a great job of capturing and telling this particular story, was that sense of, the world is acting as we are all seeing it act. But man, is it so crazy to imagine that what we really, really fear might be going on actually is. That's kind of a thing that I take away from it.
There's the aspect of, here's something I want you to look at. Look at this thing and tell me what's wrong with it. And showing it to a bunch of people that can't tell you what's wrong with it. That feels, I may not be smart enough to articulate how political that feels in regards to sort of like, what's wrong with this picture, and nobody be able to tell you what's wrong with this picture. That there's something there that is now that I think people respond to. The aspect that at the end of the day, we go through this whole story and nothing is necessarily tied up nice with a bow, because even then you're sort of asking yourself, well, what did our narrator not see? What did Lynn see or not see? I think to wade into this, kind of like post-truth times, like what you see is not even reality. It used to be that, if I see it, it's real. And now it's a case of like, even if you see it, it might not be real. You might not be able to see it. That's weird. It's weird to live in a place where so much happens in the news cycle on an hour-to-hour basis, so beyond the pale that nobody can keep up with what they're seeing. That's one part of it. I think on a simpler side is just a matter of, and this is tale as old as time, right? Is like, if somebody comes in, rolls into a place and says that they align themselves with God and God is good, so then they must be good and everybody should do what I say. That's a whole thing, because at the end of the day, we're still talking about human beings. We're still talking about men. Whether you believe that they're led by God or not, or whatever, like whatever your beliefs are, it's still a case of like, this is a thing that happens, is fallible human people can roll into a town, rent a building and say, hey, I speak for God now. Everybody come on in. That's weird. That's really strange. And it's a huge part of the fabric of our society. And also now that's in our lawmaking, which is just mind-boggling. Like, I think even if you do believe it, that should still trouble you that anyone can just sort of say that they're a mouthpiece for an unknowable cosmic being is chilling. It's absolutely chilling. I think Man Finds Tape sidesteps a lot of very specific religious discussion. I think it colors the film. But for me, those things that I question myself are what drew me to the script. And that was what the original sort of question was, is like, were there things that resonated with me? And the idea of Endicott being who he is and being able to go into a town, set up shop, and basically, well, as long as I do a service every Sunday, I can get tithe and offering, and I can just live here and keep on doing what I'm doing. That was the stuff that connected to me specifically. A lot of the stuff I said at the top, kind of about like post-truth times and stuff like that, that sort of stuff that like after I watched the film, that stuff became much sharper. But going in, it was definitely like, people are able to set up shop using God. And it's weird. And it should, I think more people should consider it blasphemy if they believe in God.
Well, thank you both for diving headfirst into that, which could have been a loaded question. So I appreciate the
felt
thoughtful answers.
I don't know if was it thoughtful. I felt like I was weaving the thoughts together as they were coming out of my mouth. I don't know that it was coherent, but there it is.
It was. It was a beautiful tapestry by the end. Don't worry.
I'll trust you then.
What John calls weaving thoughts together to make sentences is just what we call speaking. That's how it goes.
Yeah, but it's so labored, man.
It wasn't. It was eloquent. I swear.
All right.
The work was invisible. Don't worry.
Thank you.
But you can breathe a sigh of relief. We have concluded the formal part of the interview, so now we're going to get to the dumb questions, or the easy questions, at least.
That's my bread and butter, baby.
Find them to be so, but we like to think.
Yeah, sometimes they're harder. Actually, I lie.
Yes, what Becky's alluding to is what we call the rapid fire 15, which we've learned over time is neither rapid nor fire, but it is usually 15 questions. So we kind of tailor them to the guest a little bit, but it's really more about stuff you like. This is not a cool test. There are no points. It's just first thing that comes to mind. We'll give you an example kind of just to hopefully put your mind at ease with this first question, which most people seem to know off the top of their head, which is, what movie do you think you've seen the most in your life?
The Flight of Dragons by Rankin Bass.
Oh.
For sure. I've seen that movie hundreds of times. It was my favorite as a kid.
I think it's Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Just pure numbers, I think it's Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Very nice. We're in the month of December where that is getting a Criterion Collection release after many years.
Hell yeah.
All right, question 2. Is there a movie or a song that always makes you emotional or brings you to tears?
Movie or song that always makes me emotional or brings me to tears. The Rain Song by Led Zeppelin.
Glacier by John Grant.
Nice. Both of them had an immediate song answer. Number 3, what is the first film that really scared you, maybe stuck with you, just gave you nightmares, the first one that kind of sticks out from childhood?
The Exorcist.
Yeah, Graham did explain that.
Yep.
Creep Show for me. I was not allowed to leave the room and I was terrified, and it actually turned me off of horror films for years. I didn't open myself up to horror as a genre until my 20s because of that experience.
Nice.
Whoa, was it a particular segment?
No, it was that I had nightmares very easily when I was a child. I was super scaredy cat when I was a kid. And my stepdad at the time was, this opens up a whole can of worms. He liked to see me uncomfortable. And he said, hey, there's a comic book movie on. And I came downstairs and I saw that it was scary right away and was like, I'm going to go to my bedroom. He's like, no, you can't leave. And I had to watch the whole thing and then had nightmares about it for weeks afterwards. So yeah, that was it. It was the whole thing, the whole experience.
Totally get that. All right. Well, hopefully this next question you can safely answer since you've explored the genre later in life. What is your favorite horror movie franchise? So not individual movie in a franchise, but your favorite as a whole franchise.
Oh man, that's tough. Favorite franchise. I have a soft spot for, I'm going to say, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. I love each of those weirdos differently. They're all my little weird deformed children.
God, what a question, Becky. I think the best batting average is probably Child's Play, but I tell you what, the ones I go back to and watch like I'm dumb, like I forget how bad the bad ones are, is Hellraiser. And I think it's because I love the first 2 Hellraisers so much that I'll occasionally every couple of years watch all of them. And really the first couple are good. And then like you kind of apologize for the mediocre ones after that. And like, I'll just flatly say Child's Play in regards to its overall hit percentage. I like the Jason movies as well. I like the Hellraiser thing. I like Hellraiser as a thing that exists, but I don't know if I like the Hellraiser franchise. I'll say Child's Play, which is weird because like I'm looking at my shelves right now and I have like Jason's up here and Leatherface is up here and Pinhead's up here, but Chucky is not up here. But I just think, it's kind of like Don Mattingly's not my favorite baseball player, but he had such a high batting average. I think it's just, I think it's got to be Chucky.
No, John, honestly, we've had a number of guests on this show. And we have asked that question a number of times. And I will say, like, people our age, they go with that, hey, it's got a good batting average, and they've said Child's Play. And then I think millennials onward will say the same thing about Scream and Final Destination, as far as that's their justification, is there's not as many duds, higher batting percentage in general. But yeah, we've had more than a few people say Texas Chainsaw and Child's Play.
I mean, really, you know what I just thought, what I should have said was Hammer's Frankenstein cycle, because honestly, that's the true answer. So if I can take it back, and say Hammer's Frankenstein.
You can pull a mulligan.
Yeah, multiple answers.
All right,
yeah,
there we go. It's Hammer's Frankenstein cycle.
In a related vein, we just talked about a bunch of slashers, but what would each of you say is maybe your favorite horror subgenre? Do you have like a niche within a niche of a horror that you dig?
Ooh.
You'll always gravitate toward?
Ooh, I really love sci-fi horror, anything involving space. You know, John mentioned Hellraiser. I will stump for Hellraiser Bloodline every day. I love Jason X, Event Horizon, of course, Alien, even stuff like High Life and Aniara and Sunshine, stuff like that. I love sci-fi and space horror.
It's easier for me to answer what I don't like. It's harder for me to get interested in just a slasher and just a stalk and kill slasher. That probably has the biggest uphill climb with me. If there's something, I think, you know, if I hear that something's body horror, I think my ears perk up. I think I'm more likely to get to it quicker than other genres, like subgenres. So I'll say body horror just in regards to like the speed with which I will attack it.
Fair enough. Question 6. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Easy. Alyssa Milano. Who's the boss? Mm-hmm. Oh, man. All about Alyssa Milano.
Mine is Christine McGlade, otherwise known as Moose from You Can't Do That on Television.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
That was my first crush. I was a little kid, but I used to wish Moose was my girlfriend so much.
This question, if nothing else, reveals ages more than anything.
Yeah.
Definitely. Both of you very close to my death rattle of Gen X, for sure. You guys have both mentioned doing your share of sketch and just comedy. What would you say, speaking of high batting averages, what was maybe your favorite sketch comedy show of all time? And if not maybe that, do you have just an all-timer sketch that you love and always will go back to and still laugh at?
I mean, how is the absolute only answer not Monty Python's Flying Circus? I don't understand how there could be another answer. Flying Circus all the way. The best sketch on Flying Circus? Oh, man, I love...
sketch in general. Yeah.
I mean, or sketch in general. I mean, actually, you know what? So, well, the parrot sketch obviously is a classic. But I will say that there's an SNL sketch with Will Ferrell and Molly Shannon and Chris Parnell, and Tim Meadows makes an appearance, where Will Ferrell is a doctor and he's misplaced Molly Shannon and Chris Parnell's baby. And it is so funny. It's so stupid. And it just reeks of a scene that like maybe didn't get finished, that then they just sort of improvised. They're all laughing during it. It's great. I don't even know what you'd call that. Somebody out there in podcast world, I'm sure, will know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's where Tim Meadows plays Dr. Poop and does the robot. So, you know, highbrow stuff here.
Yeah.
I missed a lot of Monty Python, to be completely honest. So, like, I haven't watched a lot of Python, which is the only reason why my answer is probably, from a writing standpoint, is probably Mr. Show. I probably watch.
Yeah, Mr. Show's great.
I go back and watch those more often. I think Kids in the Hall, like, I like the performers. I like the core cast. There are episodes of Kids in the Hall that, like, whole episodes that can be at times laugh free. The sketch, I think, God, you run through the whole Rolodex in your mind. When you first asked the question before Graham even mentioned Will Ferrell doctor sketch, there's a Will Ferrell doctor sketch that I really like, where I think it's Parnell goes in for an exam, like turn your head and cough, and they keep having him, cupping him and saying turn your head and cough, turn your head and cough, and then they have other people come in and be like, nurse, would you mind doing this for a second? I think something's wrong. So she does turn your head and cough, turn your head and cough. Then they're going out and pulling other people into the room to like cup his balls and turn your head and cough. And then you find out that they're like, it's just a thing that they do, and they're exposed at the end of the sketch. Like the actual doctor walks in, he's like, hey, I told you guys never to come back in here, and they all take off running. That one comes to mind. It's so hard to name just one, right? It's so hard to just like, oh, it's this one. I'll say it's that one for now, and I'll give a different answer next time.
No wrong answers.
It's hard to pick favorite children.
It is.
All right. Graham's got to channel his inner Boone for this next question. What is your go-to barbecue joint in Austin?
Ooh, go-to barbecue joint.
Or maybe where would you take like a visitor if they came to town?
Well, generally, when I take somebody, there's this is such an Austin answer. It's a food truck near me down here in Buda called Louie's, and they have these incredible brisket tacos with, handmade masa flour tortillas and this really great spicy jalapeno crema, and, just juicy brisket. That's probably my go-to spot.
For me, I go to Style Switch more often than not because it's good and they rarely have a line. I think, the thing with Franklin is like Franklin's really good. Franklin made everybody else step up their game. So like there are great places that kind of have popped up in the wake of Franklin, places that are comparable, and Style Switch never has a line. So more often than not, Style Switch.
Yes. Many right answers for that one too, let's be honest. And then both of you being Texans, or at least much of your life spent in Texas, do either of you have like a stereotypically Texan trait or habit that maybe you can't shake?
Ooh, I say fixin' and yeah, I don't know. I think it's a lot of just Texas isms, the way that I talk. I say, y'all, stuff like that. I measure things by how many minutes it takes to get there, not by miles. I think that's definitely a Texas thing. Yeah, so that's but probably like just kind of generally the way I talk, just those little subtle isms.
Man, I'm trying to think of an answer different than Graham's because I think that like all those ring true. I've been told I say lawyer weird. I say the word lawyer in the movie, actually, and I have been told that I say lawyer weird. I'm trying to be really careful right now. Like, I don't know if I'm saying it weird.
No,
sounds right. Sounds right to me.
It sounds
Americans in general
Texan.
started saying it Lowe or Loyer, lawyer. I think most people say lawyer now. So when you say it properly, John, you sound crazy, but you're not crazy. Everyone else is crazy for saying lawyer.
I think
really is
for
lawyer.
Me, I never felt more Texan than when I lived in Georgia and I pined for HEB. That was the most Texas I ever felt. Was like, what Publix, Piggly Wiggly? Where's my freaking HEB? That was the biggest pain for me was not having an HEB when I lived in Savannah for a few years.
Yeah, I know people that pine for HEB and they haven't even lived in Texas. They've just visited and really missed shopping there. So I get it.
Okay. Yes.
Somewhere between Fredericksburg and El Paso, there stops existing breakfast tacos and kolaches as you go west, and it's really disappointing. So I will say, when I left there, the food, you are chasing that food. So when you hear a new place pop up that says it's Texas barbecue, you go and you judge it against what you know of Texas barbecue. So yeah, that is real.
When Man Finds Tape opened in Tribeca, I found a place called Hill Country Barbecue that I went and had lunch at. It did not taste like Hill Country Barbecue, by the way, I should say, but they think it does. So okay, that's fine. They can think that.
All right, switching gears now into music. Do you have a favorite concert that you've attended, or maybe just a really memorable concert experience?
I'm going to kind of lump together a whole bunch of them, but it's essentially the same. It's more or less the same one. So when I lived in New York City for 10 years, and my favorite band is the Allman Brothers Band. And the Allman Brothers, when Greg was still alive, had a residency at the Beacon Theater in New York every year for like 40 years. And so all 10 years that I lived there, I went every single year to the Beacon when they would go play. So just in general, I'm going to say the Allman Brothers at the Beacon Theater.
For me, I got second row seats at Alice Cooper Book of Death tour, which was like the gimmick of the tour was that he was going to kill himself in all the different ways he had killed himself every decade. So he did the guillotine and he did the electric chair and he did the hanging. And so after every couple songs, he would do a new execution. That was a really, really fun show. And it stood out to me as like the best show that I'd seen up to that point. Yeah, that's my go-to.
Related question, and Becky likes to ask this of folks, and I don't blame her. What is your go-to karaoke song? And let's say you don't even do karaoke necessarily, or maybe you just don't do it sober. If you were lulled into it, if you were coaxed into it, what would the song be that you would belt out for us?
I need no coaxing, and it's always come sail away by Styx.
Mr. Jones by Counting Crows.
There you go.
Nice.
They had it ready to go. They're karaoke pros.
Oh, yeah. And I'm surprised that Graham and I haven't gone.
Yeah, we need to remedy that. When we start our sketch troupe, we'll do a karaoke scene.
Nice. All right. What would be your entrance or walkout music? Like if you're a ball player, a wrestler, going out to a TED Talk or something, you want to get the crowd pumped and ready for you. What are you playing?
Okay, my entrance music is going to be the music this is true, that I play when I'm like hastily packing a bag, when I'm like going on a vacation and I've inevitably not packed anything and I have to leave for the airport in like 10 minutes. What always gets me going is the Back to the Future theme. So I mean, nothing gets your blood pumping like that. So I'm going to play that as my entrance music. And then I think it would be really funny if my walkout music was the end credits music of the Incredible Hulk TV show.
Nice. You both went with 2 instrumental scores. I like it.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
I have used entrance music before for myself, and I have used this song called Royal Jelly by a band called Deep Valley. I have used that multiple times as my entrance music. For the longest time, I think Private Life by Oingo Boingo might have been my answer, but in reality, I've used Royal Jelly, so I have to say Royal Jelly.
Question 13. Do either of you have a standout favorite theatrical experience, or maybe it's like a festival screening with an amazing crowd? Maybe it's something you were in, or just something you saw that just was electric. Is there something that sticks out? John sounds like he's got something.
Yeah, the minute you said it, I was like, can I go first, Grant?
Yeah, go, please.
All right,
go.
So I saw Mission to Mars, the Brian De Palma film, on opening night, and I have never seen an audience turn on a film the way they turned on Mission to Mars, and it was the most memorable theatrical experience I've ever had. Like, people, at some point, the audience just flipped and gave up and kind of went, we're all in this together. And they were openly hostile to the movie, laughing at things that weren't intended to be funny. There were 2 girls I remember sitting on like the second or third row that stood up and faced the crowd behind them because it was, stadium seating, and said, "Why is everyone laughing?" Just was like yelling at the audience for laughing. There was the moment at the end of the movie where the alien stands over the earth and holds everybody's hands, and one single tear rolls down the alien's cheek, and somebody in the audience went, "Oh," and the audience lost their shit. It was like the chicken stuff from Minecraft. Like, everybody just exploded. That Mission to Mars screening is still like one of the craziest theatrical experiences I've ever seen, because I've never seen an audience hate a movie while a movie was playing. Like, they just collectively all of a sudden decide, yeah, we're none of us are into this. It was pretty wild. Yeah, that's the one that I can't imagine there'll be one that will beat that in my lifetime.
Oh man, that's a great one. That's great. I have so many that I just immediately was flooded with memories of that are all great. I think that the very tip top one, if I had a gun to my head, the tip top one was I was 16 years old and I had been on the relatively new internet. And, we had the internet was still like kind of a newish place. And I had been seeing all these ads for something called the Blair Witch Project. And it wasn't playing anywhere near me in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but I was fascinated by it. I was all over the website. And my family was going on vacation to New York City in a couple weeks. And I was like, well, they play everything there. And I saw that at the Landmark Sunshine Cinema, they were indeed showing a preview screening of the Blair Witch Project while I was in town. My parents did not want to come with me. And for some reason, they let me, a 16-year-old, brand new to New York, go to a midnight screening by myself to see the Blair Witch Project. They had like memorabilia. This is back when everybody thought it was real. Like, we thought it was a documentary. They had like memorabilia and shit set up in the lobby. The whole thing was played up as if it were a real thing. And I have never felt more electric in a movie than watching that with that audience. Nobody knowing that it was fake. Everybody not really knowing what this thing was. And then I'll never forget, at the end of the movie, the final shot happens, it's silence, and then the credits start to roll, and somebody turns to their person that they're with and just says, "Did we just watch 3 people die?" I thought I had. It was, oh man, I've never been as scared in a theater. That was an electric night.
It's crazy how, like, I saw it, I think, opening weekend as well. And it's funny, those movies that have like a specific charge to them that are like, I've watched Blair Witch more than once. So you can watch it more than once, but you're only going to get that specific charge one time. And Paranormal Activity is kind of that way as well, where it's like, yeah, you can do this, but you're only going to get it the once. And every other time, that feeling is not going to be there for you. But man, that one time though, oh God.
I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with Blair Witch, it's hard to describe, too, the atmosphere around it, where people were not used to found footage or that sort of viral internet marketing style where people thought it was real. And I tried to explain that to my daughter when I was showing her the movie, and she's like, how did people think this was real, Mom? That's ridiculous. I'm like, you weren't around in the 90s. You don't understand what it was like then.
They put a full hour-long documentary about the lore on cable television for people to build up. I mean,
and the fake website.
Played totally straight.
Yeah, they had us fooled. All right, penultimate question, question 14. If you could program a double feature of any two films in the world to show yourself, like your two wolves, if you will, what would it be? What would be your double feature? No matter how you want to frame it, they can have nothing to do with each other, or they could complement each other.
You could theme it. They could be opposites, whatever you want.
To show myself, like...
A Graham Skipper double feature.
To show others about yourself.
To show others about...
yes. Since you're an actor, yes.
Graham's like, what would it show me?
Yeah. Movies that represent you in some way.
Oh, God, that is so hard.
So hard.
That is so hard. Okay, I'm just going to go with the first things that pop into my head, which are a billion movies right now. Okay, I'm going to go with... Fuck it. Yeah, I'm going to go with The Flight of Dragons because not anybody that I've talked to has ever seen that movie, and it is a magical fucking movie. I have seen it as an adult. I love that movie. It's a Rankin Bass, made around the same time as like their Hobbit and their Lord of the Rings, and I think it's better than all of them. It's definitely better than The Last Unicorn, which it always gets paired with or compared to, and it's infinitely better than The Last Unicorn. Dare I said it? Don't come at me. So I'm going to start with The Flight of Dragons. And then I'm going to I want to go with something like surreal, something strange. I mean, fuck it. Let's go Flight of Dragons into Boxer's Omen and just really blow some minds.
A wild ride indeed.
Right.
This is such a daunting question, and I have analysis paralysis. I'm going to spit out knee-jerk answers. The Muppet movie, and I'll say this would make a terrible double feature, but I'm just going to say it anyways. Was just The Fly, Cronenberg's The Fly.
Yeah.
What if you swap them and then you chase it with the Muppet movie to like cleanse the palate?
No, leave him gross.
That's true.
Leave him angry.
No, fair enough. Becky did not grow up with the Muppets the way us olds did, so that's usually a question I ask on here, but we didn't get to it this time about who's your favorite Muppet. So bonus quick question, 14.5. Quick answer, who's your favorite Muppet?
Gonzo.
Pre-Muppets in Space Gonzo. It's Gonzo, but I don't need sentimental. Gonzo can have sentimentality, but the weird flip in his character where he's like... almost like a motivational speaker about how being different is cool. I don't need that. I just need him to be different. Like, I like weirdo, insane Daredevil Gonzo more than I like post Muppets in Space Gonzo.
Yeah. Aim into that.
That's me.
Now he's still that same weirdo. He just preaches to you through the camera.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with him. I get it. Like, it's important for kids to feel like it's okay to be different, but I think you can do that by doing and not saying.
Reaching his hand to the camera, not unlike John Gholson. And Man Finds Tape, out now on VOD and in limited theatrical runs in places like New York, LA, and others. Final question for both of you. What would be your dream role and or project? Is there original ideas or a fictional character, a historical figure whose story you'd like to bring to life? Is there something you'd have sitting there half written that you'd like to adapt? Something original? What do you have?
I have for many, many years been working on, I say working on, I mean, I've been trying to figure out how in the hell I would ever get to do this, but I want to play Peter Lorre in a biopic about his life.
I would see that movie.
Mm-hmm.
The only time I've ever reached out to a filmmaker to say like, hey, I want an audition. Like, I want to be considered. Some guys about 15, 16 years ago, they were going to make a feature narrative film about the making of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I wanted to play Paul Partain so bad. I wanted to sit in the chair and say, Sally. Like, I could see myself as Paul Partain and was like, if this moves forward, please consider me. I will come in, I will audition, et cetera, et cetera. It never happened. It's always been one of the film never happened. So it wasn't like it got away. It was like nobody ever made whatever that movie was. That's the one that to me, like, I wish I would have had the opportunity to play. At this point, I'm not sure. I don't think that there's anything that's necessarily like out there lingering. I've been very fortunate, I think, to have, as a chubby white nerd, I've been very fortunate to not get typecast as a chubby white nerd. I have played very, very few chubby white nerds, which is great. And as long as I can keep playing against type, that's a nice place to live.
So mission accomplished, dreams fulfilled already. Love it.
Yep.
Right. It's all downhill from here.
Here we go.
Sounds like you kind of just cracked your first sketch idea together for your Austin troupe, is the making of Texas Chainsaw sketch where you're doing the Patty.
And somehow ends in karaoke. Gotta bring it back to that.
Perfect.
Before we wrap up with you, gents, we appreciate the time, of course. I know we run a little long here. That happens sometimes with two guests, and we appreciate the time. But do you have anything you can tell folks about, like, what might be next for you? Anything you're able to promote or plug that might be out in the public right now?
So a couple years ago, I worked with Toho Studios to write the official guide to the Godzilla franchise, and it is out through Welbeck Publishing. But coming up in 2026, a couple months ago, I completed work on a second edition, which includes chapters on Godzilla -1, Godzilla X Kong, several of the new TV shows, stuff like that. So look out for it in 2026, and you can better believe that I will be pushing that thing on all the socials when it is ready to come out.
Graham doesn't know this, but he may have gotten a hint of it because he kind of like moved here. We played games once and I immediately started texting him. But Graham may not know how much I actually like him. Like, I just like him. And he wasn't able to come to the Beyond Fest screenings of Man Finds Tape because he was across town at a different theater doing like a retrospective Godzilla screening. And I don't think I've ever told you this, but if you look at the pictures of Beyond Fest, I wore a Godzilla button up specifically to represent you at our Beyond Fest screening because you weren't there. And I've never told you that. But
oh my God, I love that.
It was very deliberate because I was like, we need a piece of Graham here on stage with us. And that's exactly
buddy.
What that was.
Oh, man, thank you. That's so cool. Yeah, I was so mad. They literally, Beyond Fest is like a 2-week-long festival. And they scheduled my screening that I was hosting at the Arrow in Santa Monica of Godzilla Final Wars with Ruhei Kitamura directly at the exact same time as the Man Finds Tape screening across town in Los Feliz. I was so pissed. But, look, an embarrassment of riches, then, John, that is very, very sweet. I just adore that. Thank you.
I was 100% thinking of you.
That's really great. Thank you.
I mean, I got this movie called Man Finds Tape on all VOD platforms and limited theatrical release. I've got Fuck My Son, which is, I don't know if it's still in LA. It got held over like weeks and weeks. It keeps selling out in LA. I just saw it on 35 millimeter in Dallas. They struck up 35 millimeter print of Fuck My Son, and that's touring as well, and will continue to tour throughout 2026. I know it's coming back to Austin in 2026. So Fuck My Son.
And you have to see that in theaters, right? Because I don't think the director plans to ever release it digitally.
Yeah, that's the
correct?
plan. He does not. And if you see the movie, it's not even the explicit things that happen, but there are specific legal things that happen in the movie that you'll notice right away when they happen, where it's like, oh, yeah, you're never going to be able to get this on streaming or on a physical disc without altering the film. So there's like legal clearance stuff that I think is specifically baked in so that people would have to watch it in a movie theater.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and that's where it's going to be for the next year. So 2026, it'll be going around, and that's all I have at the moment. I'm doing a short film called Terms and Conditions with some of the Fantastic Fest volunteers have gotten together and are going to be doing like a short horror film, a bunch of friends that were made at Fantastic Fest. And I think that's next for me as far as like my next thing I'm participating in.
No, very cool to hear. I was happy to say I met the famous Dax at Fantastic Fest very briefly. Graham showed up with his dog and missing a lot of himself. He looks great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been quite a year.
Yeah, motivating me to also lose a good big fraction of myself too. But yeah.
Thank you.
But yes, both of you, again, Graham, I hope you do know you are loved by everybody. I know actors can get in their own head about stuff like that, but please know we all thank the world of you. The king of Christmas horror, as Paper Street has nicknamed him. I own his Godzilla book, and now he's going to break my bank by making me buy that new edition because I did love -1 dearly among the other.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, it's, like I said, hey, the horror family is exactly that. It's one big family. And it's always especially nice here at the end of the year to kind of reflect back and just think on, I don't know, it's been fun to chat with you guys today and think about how we all got here and how we all just want to keep making fun stuff with each other.
Indeed. And having barbecue and singing karaoke.
Hell yeah.
And watching sketch troops named the Voyager 2. I don't know. John can workshop that.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll workshop
figure
something.
it out. We'll figure it out.
Enter the Voyager 2.
There you
Maybe.
go.
There you go.
It's work in progress.
Look for it next year. Well, thank you again, both, for sharing your experiences with us, getting into some deep, dark questions, and then sticking around for the fun ones that ended up probably being just as challenging.
There were some
Thought they stressed John out is what
It
they
was
said.
hard.
because my thing is I get where I'm like, it's a push pull of rambling where I'm like, I reel it in, like in my head, I have like an internal monologue that's like, reel it in, John, bring it home. And I'm like, but I'm still talking. And then I don't know if what I said is even makes any sense. Fine. So I appreciate you guys confirming that it did in fact make sense.
The push pull of rambling is one of Graham's favorite Allman Brothers songs.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
But yes, thank you both again for the time. And Man Finds Tape, look for it now on VOD. If you're in one of the bigger cities, look for it at a theater near you. This is a fun movie. This is a very cool movie. We were glad to talk about it with you guys. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.